Welcome to our fifth episode of Diary of Insurtech, where we explore the latest trends, developments, and stories shaping the insurance industry. Today, we're excited to have our very own John Higginson with us to talk about his journey in technology and AI, his thoughts on the industry, and some of the exciting things happening at Rival. Welcome, John. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. It's good to see you, Ellen. It's good to see you, Stephanie. It's good to be with you guys again.
Good to see you. So I want to start at the beginning. I always talk about, how did people fall into insurance, but can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got into tech?
Yeah, so I was a computer kid. So when I was, I guess if you go all the way back when I was a little kid, Star Trek was rerunning on TV. And I love watching that show. And I'm like, I couldn't really like explain it, but I'm like, whatever that was, like I wanted to be part of it. And then when personal computers became a thing, first in my school, and then for me personally, I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing I want to do. This box could do all these different things. Make music. It could play games. Like it could help manage a budget for a business. And so I got the bug for that very early. And I spent like most of my like junior high school years just doing that, like exploring. It was a cool time too, because it was like kind of the dawn of computers is really an accessible thing. It was the very beginning of computers entering into offices. Like there was a time when most people in an office didn't have a computer, and like that changed very, very rapidly. And the internet and the web kind of followed not long after that. So it was a pretty exciting time to be involved. And then, yeah, falling into insurance, I probably quite literally fell into insurance. So I graduated from college, and I didn't really know where to go work. There was a recession happening in the United States at the time, and there just weren't a lot of jobs out there. And a friend of my mom worked for this company called Applied Systems that was in University Park, Illinois. And if you've never been to University Park, there's not a whole lot there other than Applied Systems was there and a few factories. And it was basically a startup at that point. Like they were in their first ever office. It was pretty small. And so I interviewed there, got a job, and it was at a time when Applied, like everybody did everything in Applied. And it turned out to be a great like early career move because I got to work on data migrations. I got to support customers. I got to work on the app. I was there for some of the early revisions of TAM. And so it's just a really fun time to be there. But I knew nothing. I did not come from an insurance family. I knew nothing about it other than it was really important to keep my grades at a certain level to get the insurance, the auto discount. But other than that, I knew nothing about insurance.
No, that's funny. It's really true. Like a lot of people just kind of fall into the space and we kind of just stick with insurance after once we get a taste of it. It's such a wonderful industry to be a part of. So from your history, you've led product and engineering at scale across sectors. What's one core principle that stayed true no matter what domain?
I think because I've worked across a few different industries. So, I've obviously with Applied, I worked in insurance, I've worked in e-commerce, and I've worked in ed tech. I would say you have to build teams that can help solve problems. I think the thing that I learned early on, this is, because I kind of grew up at Applied and like grew into being a product and tech leader at Applied, is at some point in the team and the company's journey, you as whatever leadership role you were playing, you cannot be the fulcrum by which everything happens. You have to be able to align the team toward outcomes, and you have to have people in the team, and you have to give them agency and autonomy to solve problems. Some of my happiest moments, like the most fun I've had in jobs, has been when somebody came up with like, here's the thing we were trying to figure out, and somebody in a part of the team came back and said, I was thinking about this, and I think we could do it this way, and they showed it off, and like that became a feature in the product, or it became the way that we deployed the website, or it became a way we dealt with like traffic spikes. And I think that's the thing that transcends all of that. I think you have to build and encourage teams that can work well together, collaborate well together, but also like feel free to like bring ideas forward and like push you and the team to think differently about things.
I love that. That is so, so important. And I love how you're saying like this is across no matter what domain it is. This is
Yeah.
just a universal truth when it comes to this work. So you're advising us here at Rival.
Mhm.
What drew you to us? What excites you about Insurtech and our vision here at Rival?
Yeah, so there's two parts to the answer. So, obviously as a young lad, I worked with Greg Purdy, who's Rival CEO, and I have tremendous respect for Greg. He was long a mentor for me when we were working together. He was running the Canadian operation when I joined the company, and I got to travel with him, and we worked on the UK together because Applied we established an office, and then we wound up having a partner in the UK. And so I really enjoy working with Greg. And so the opportunity to spend time thinking through problems with him and like thinking through products with him was really interesting to me. And the other is I think one of the things that I look back on my time at Applied with that I'm most proud of is we were kind of like the pirate ship in a really well old well-ordered navy. So we were the ones saying why do you need these forms? Why is rating like 3 months out of date? Why can't we just connect in real time to the carrier system and give you that rate, broker? So we built that. Why can't people print their own auto ID cards? So we built that. Like these are all things we take for granted as insurance consumers today, but they didn't exist until Applied came around and did them. And Applied was always a company that, a lot of the industry was like, well, this is the way we do it. And we've been doing it this way for a long time. It's just the way it works. And we came along and said, well, why? Why not? Why can't we do it differently? And that's the same spirit that I see and feel in Rival is, yeah, we've done it this way as brokers, as MGAs for a while, but in this new world with AI, like we can actually think differently about workflows. We can think differently about even the way that our producers and CSRs interact with information and how much we provide kind of digital assistance to help them do those things. That's something that just wasn't in the industry, and Rival is the only one doing that and is the only one really pushing that forward. Not just talking about, but actually doing the work to make it happen.
Beautiful. Thanks, John.
Yeah, John, I think we mentioned AI. I think that kind of segments nicely into talking a bit more about product scale and strategy. When building products, how do you balance, say, speed, quality, innovation, security, especially when AI enters the equation?
Yeah, I think all those things have been in the water, in the past. AI is a little more challenging on like data privacy and like data protection, just because the thing that makes it run, like the fuel for the engine is data, because the more data you can give it, the better trained it is, the better answers it can give you. But I think as long as we've been making software, certainly as long as I've been making software, like the balance of like, get it in the hands of your customers, make sure it's working well, protecting the information has always been part of it. I think with AI, it is, we are still in the space as people shaping AI into products, because there's like these big platform providers like Google and OpenAI that are building these things, and then we're turning them into products. I think it is figuring out how to understand what's possible, do something that gives us actual feedback from our customers, because while we can make predictions about how they would want to use it and what could be valuable for them, there's no real substitute from being able to put something working in front of them, even if it's not done, even if it's just like a prototype, and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this as a shift for your workflow, and doing that? And then on the back end, it is, when we say, yeah, this is the feature we want to give to, to brokers in this case, let's make sure it works for them. Let's make sure it scales. And then on the data side, like, we have tools today too, like there's third-party audits that we can do. people we can bring in to help us validate that, but making sure that like the people that if we're feeding data into AI, that it is appropriately de-identified, that if we are giving people access to information, that we have the permissions and the controls in place to do that. So I think AI requires us to do a little more on that front, but I think that's always been, AI, before AI, that's always been kind of the balance we've had to walk.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And as Steph mentioned, you do have insights in what we're doing here at Rival. You've seen us, scale and really growing. You've scaled teams to 400 plus. What's something most companies get wrong about scaling product and engineering teams?
One big thing that I think companies get wrong is they fall in love with the idea that if we only had N number of people, all of our problems will go away. And the reality is having constraints is actually pretty useful. Like if you said, you have unlimited budget, I would say I'd rather have a limited budget because you do have to, it forces you to make smart choices about what you invest in. It also helps you make smart choices about the people you hire. And I think that's the other lesson that comes in is teams often, companies when they scale, at least when they scale product and tech teams, I'm not sure how this like works in other functions in the company really, but with product and tech, a lot of times even people in these roles tend to view them as fungible resources. Like, well, engineer here, engineer there, they're kind of the same. And that's absolutely not true. And it's not true in terms of experience. It's not true in terms of productivity. It's not true in terms of the ability to like think and solve problems. And so I think one thing I've done for years, going back to Applied is I interview almost everybody that comes through the door, interns, directors. And the reason I do that is because there's a lot of decisions I could make. I could pick Azure and not AWS. I could pick Gemini or Perplexity. But in 2 or 3 years' time, none of those decisions are likely to really matter. But picking this person to be on the team versus this person could be hugely impactful. Because it's about the culture of the team, it's about the products we're building, and it's about having the capacity to, when the team does get bigger, like where's the next generation of leaders going to come from that knows the platform, that knows the team and does that. So I think, they get it wrong by saying, well, we're just going to open up the purse and spend money. And they get it wrong by not being really, really zealous about hiring the right people to bring on the team.
I love that. Thanks, John.
Oh my gosh, John, I could just listen to you talk all the time. You're talking about language, leadership, and just thinking about people. But then also I can see like even just in the reality here at Rival, like we need those constraints. We need to have that pinch like that. It gives us that necessity to think differently, that push for us to be creative. So, we're not really dabbling. We're really heavily investing into AI. So
Yeah.
what do you think companies underestimated about adopting AI into their product workflows?
I think we're so the best analogy, I've been thinking about this for a little bit, that I can go back to is the kind of the dawn of the web. So let me throw out some things that I heard back then and see if they sound at all familiar. Product cycles are way shorter. Like we're putting software out like every few weeks, not every year. It totally changes the way that people interact with computers. It changes our access to information. All sounds really familiar, right? That was everything we said about the web. Like, oh, developing websites or web applications, totally different. It's much faster. Like Windows app, oh, that's yesterday's news. So web apps are faster. More information. Now, some of that is true, but like there's just reality about what it takes to build good software and secure it and all the things we talked about a minute ago. And I think what companies are getting wrong now is they fall into one of two camps. They fall into the, oh, it's easy. Like I saw this demo and I can, just pull up with a prompt in ChatGPT and type a few lines in and I'll have, all the software I need. Well, it doesn't work that way. And the other is that they like shy away from it and like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to push people to do it. Like, I know one thing that Rival's done really well is like, there has been this like very deep commitment to train people, to evangelize the use of AI, to celebrate people's usage of it. Because the other mistake that companies make is like just to ignore it and like hope it'll either go away or, you know, somebody else will figure it out. So I think we're in this place where, yeah, there are some, you know, game-changing things that are happening with AI. And so you need to be familiar with what's happening, look at the trends, embrace the idea of experimentation. Say, yeah, we're going to try this. Like we're going to understand it, we're going to try it, and if it works, we're going to build it into our product. If it doesn't, then, you know, we're going to move forward. And you have to understand there's a difference between experiment and like working product. And I think the mistake, like not so much maybe companies make, but you know, sometimes like investors or boards can make is when you're abstracted away from like the actual hard work of doing it, it's like, oh, it seems so easy. Like I heard Mark Benioff say he doesn't have engineers anymore. And then you ask Mark Benioff, he's like, no, we actually have engineers. It's just making those engineers faster and better. Like, so I think they're like between like the hype and like the, you know, treating it like a, you know, like a pet rock fad, like there's the hard work of like experimentation and learning and then seeing what makes sense for the products that you're building. And then, you know, moving really fast to, you know, to get them in there.
Oh yeah, like we at Rival really trying to adopt that experimentation mindset. It is like, you know, like it's almost like slowing down to move quicker, and investing and figuring out ways to doing it better. So the next question I have here is because we are kind of doing this, but if you are building a product from scratch in 2025, where would you start with AI as your co-founder?
AI is my co-founder. Wow. What, I wonder what kind of yogurt or bevy machine they want. I think I would start with like one of the things that I, you know, having worked in building products in a long time is I think people really gravitate toward when you can have a conversation around, let me show you something that we can all, you know, touch and feel and understand. I think that's where I'd start. Like I'd use you know, whether it is like some of the vibe coding, you know, practices, like there's a pretty interesting platform that's totally geared toward like non-engineering people called Lovable.ai. And it's a way to like just create applications, you know, go into a prompt and it actually tells you like, hey, I think I can make this faster. You know, would you like to see how I can do that? Would you like to change the colors? But the cool part about that is like you can have a conversation with the AI. It builds a working web application for you. And if I were starting a company, like I would do something like that. And then I would take it to, you know, my potential customers, like other people and say, what do you think of this? And then get that feedback and then use that to like just rapidly iterate on that. I think that's the way I would use it. There's a lot of benefits, like, you know, I've been involved in like using it for accelerating, you know, code creation, documentation, you know, basically like documentation, you know, I'm sure as you've talked to the engineers at Rival, like asking engineers to document things is often very, very difficult because it's like the last thing we ever want to do. One of the great uses of some of the AI tools is you can say, hey, look at this code and write documentation for me that tells me what it does, which you can then give to like the BAs or you can give to like new engineers. So there's lots of great like accelerants for the development process, but I think starting a company and starting a product, it would be, you know, use something that can create something, a working prototype quickly and then get feedback on it.
No, I love it. Like, 'cause like let the customers have like a touch and feel because they can't visualize the vision without like, you know, playing around with something. So I love that idea.
Yeah,
Excellent.
there's a Steve Jobs quote, which is you can't ask customers what they want because they can't tell you, but you can show them something and they'll tell you what works and what doesn't. And you know, I've always thought about that. Like that's why, like, you know, I've been in places where people are like, well, we should have like a customer panel where we ask them what they want. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. What we should do is we should build something based on the experience we have and show it to them. If they hate it, that gives us that answer. If they like parts of it, that's even better because then we know where to go with it. But you can't have like an open, like, okay, brokers, let's whiteboard something, because that's not what they do. Like they can't, it's hard to articulate it.
Great tip.
And I love looking at these applications in the positive, John, like they're accelerants rather than that negative kind of easy to fall into a trap of, oh, it's taking away something. No, like let's look at it as the accelerant. It's super cool. If you could wave a magic wand and give Rival one superpower in the next 12 months, what would that be?
I think I would take, if I could like take all the knowledge we have at this moment about all the AI tools out there, and like download that in everyone's heads. I think that would be cool. Like, because there's so many really interesting things, and I know that like every other company trying to figure out how to use these things to fashion new products, it's so vast. Like there's so many things and it's changing so rapidly. I think just like taking all the collective wisdom that we have about AI in this moment and like, giving it to the hands of the product and tech team at Rival would be great. Because that from that would be, the product ideas and also like the ways to build it faster.
I love that. Very cool. Okay, John, we're coming to the end of what's been a really, really insightful discussion. Now time for our personal question, the more fun part of the session. So before we wrap up, we have a personal question given you in advance, and we love to ask this to every guest, just to get to know them a little bit better. So the question is, if you could have dinner with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
I think if it's one person, I think the person I would pick is Richard Feynman. So if you don't know Richard Feynman, he's a physicist. He worked on the Manhattan Project, so he built the first nuclear weapon. But he was a physicist and an educator both before and after that. And he has a very famous series of lectures at Caltech talking about physics. But his superpower was he could explain the most complicated things in ways people could understand. There's a very famous video, if you've ever seen it. So when one of the American space shuttles exploded, they had a panel of experts to help understand what happened, what went wrong. And they had all these experts, and they talked about, well, we use this material and this rocket, and when these gases combust. And the actual root cause was there was a foam ring that sealed sections of the rocket. And at cold temperatures, it shrank, as like, rubber does, and it allowed gases to escape and it exploded. And so Richard Feynman listened to like an hour of testimony, and he reached over, he poured a glass of ice water from a pitcher next to him, and he asked the NASA administrator for a section of the actual material for the ring, and he dropped it in the water, left it in there, kind of hummed to himself for a while, and then about a minute later he pulled it out and it was like a third of the size. He's like, is this what happened? And everybody in the room's like, oh yeah, that's what happened. And I just love that. I think he was just a really fascinating individual. Like he taught himself to play bongos for some reason. He taught himself how to pick locks when he was bored. So I think he'd be a very, very fascinating dinner partner.
What an interesting guy. I feel like you're the same type of person though too. You can really explain something so technical to me, and I'm just like, okay, now I get it. John, explain it.
My favorite, I don't think Greg remembers this, but back years ago, we worked together at Applied. I explained client server computing to him using pepper and salt shakers. So that to this day, I think is my most Richard Feynman example.
No, it's true, because Greg will be like, okay, explain it to me as if I'm in grade 2. He always says it. So I guess he set a precedent for him for us to communicate. But no, this has been so fun, John. I really appreciate you joining us today. I can't believe the time went by so quickly. So I hope you had fun.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I did. This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, everyone, thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time for more great discussions on Diary of an Insurtech. So I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.
Welcome to the future. Let's let's rival it too. Ashley, Steph, and Ellen, bringing insights to you. Tech meets insurance, we're shaping the way. Diary of an insurance, just press play.